Hey guys, welcome back to Tennis 360, the newest podcast from QualityShot Tennis. My name is Anthony Hirsch,
And I'm Eliza Wastcoat.
and we're here to cover all things tennis. This is the second episode now that we've done for the podcast, and a lot of this episode is going to be about U.S. Open. The draw came out a few days ago, came out on Thursday, and we're here to discuss the draw, interesting things about the draw, and other things that have been going on this week as well, but mostly talk about New York that's coming up.
Yeah, excited to get started.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay, so first let's talk about before we get into the US Open stuff, I want to quickly talk about Cleveland and Winston-Salem that happened this week. So this week we got two surprise champs. We got Sebastian Baez and Sorribes Tormo winning titles in Cleveland and in Winston-Salem. And yeah, I mean it's two players that you didn't really expect to do well in hard court events, and I think that going into this week, either player would have been very shocked if you're like, okay, at the end of this week, you're going to win the title. And Sebastian Baez wins his third title of the season, which is only behind Medvedev, Alcaraz, and Djokovic as well. So yeah, your thoughts on the surprise champs. I was very surprised to see Baez winning, but happy for a young guy that very few talk about.
Yes, especially given that hard courts usually aren't his preferred surface, usually a clay court type of specialist. So to see him have some success on a hard court, I think is testament to, the progression and hard work he's been putting in this season, and really making himself, a name inside the top 50 that can cause problems for players kind of across the board on all surfaces. So I think huge achievement for him. I know he had a couple of slug matches in there too. So to come out of that on top is a big victory for him. And if I'm not wrong, I thought Sorribes Tormo might have been a lucky loser in that draw. So to come in
she was,
and actually take the title home, only her second WTA title, really impressive. Again, not a player that we would think as a significant contender on a hard court. And she's also, faced a little bit of adversity this season. So, big victory for her coming through as an underdog against a strong player in Alexandrova, who I think you might have had in your power rankings last week. She is strong on faster courts. So a little bit of a surprise there, but maybe I hate to hint at this because I think every player always gives 100%, but with a Grand Slam right around the corner, I sometimes wonder if there might be a couple percentage points of gas kept in the tank just in case with these types of tournaments leading up right to a Grand Slam.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. I mean, you hope that everybody is always giving 100% in the sport, but with the US Open right around the corner, it's like maybe we'll try like 97% and hope like that's good enough. And yeah, I don't know. We got some good matches this week, but yeah, the big story of this week was really surprise names. Yeah, I mean, other things going on this week: Caroline Garcia, Krejcikova, their bad streaks kind of continue. I mean, Krejcikova, she was like, I'm part of the big four like a few months ago, you know what I mean? And then suddenly for her, it was like, no, not really. She's struggling to win a match. And I really am high on Krejcikova, but she's been on a bad streak of play, which is quite unfortunate. And then also, who is it? Caroline Garcia with her very aggressive game. And with aggressive games, you can either be hitting a lot of winners or a lot of unforced. And that's kind of what's going on with her, and a lot of poor decisions as well.
Yeah, it's surprising. With Krejcikova, you'd think of her as usually a pretty consistent player, and as you say, she wanted to be a part of that big four. And it's almost like since saying that, she's shot herself in the foot or given herself some bad karma or something, because it's just it's not gone uphill for her this season. And yeah, I just don't think she's a name that's really in the mix for contender for slams at the moment. Unfortunately, it just seems like she's lost some confidence in her game. And with Garcia, we've seen her yo-yo a little bit before in terms of performance over the years. She has been playing on the WTA tour for a number of years. She's not, one of the young guns. So last year was when we really saw her resurgence back into the top 10 with some phenomenal performances on the grass. A run to the semis at the US Open last year. And she does have that very aggressive style of tennis. And I think she's amongst those types of players where when it's on and it's working. And then one can get into these bad ruts that extend for longer periods of time and link to confidence. And yeah, she just really hasn't had a good go at it over the last couple of months. And one is fearful that she might drop out of the top 10 soon.
Yeah, no, for sure. Yeah, and especially since she's defending WTA finals. And yeah, she just lost points in Canada or Cincinnati. She won one of those last year. I forget which one it was. But yeah, Caroline Garcia dropping points. Yeah, that's unfortunate to see. Yeah, I mean, there were a few players earlier this year too. I mean, Muguruza was, yeah, she was, yeah, and it's a WTA finals curse, I think, and then where they just can't win, and then also Raducanu, who won US Open. I mean, just a few of these top players who do really well, and everybody's super expecting them to pick up, and then they just can't really do it. But yeah, that's kind of what's been going on in Cleveland. Sorribes Tormo was a really surprise to me. And then also semifinals, another surprise name, Lin Zhu, I thought played really fantastic. She beat a couple of seeds. She beat Caroline Garcia 6-4, 6-1. She beat Blinkova in the first round 6-3, 6-0. I got to catch a little bit of the Garcia match, and she was just hitting phenomenal. I mean, kind of unorthodox her strokes. But she was hitting a lot of winners, a lot of forehand passing shots, just really great hands too. She really impressed me with her game, and I think if she consistently keeps that up, she could be a problem. So shout out to her.
Yeah.
And
okay, at the AO last year, or this past year, either at the AO or the warm up tournaments to the AO. She caused a couple problems for some bigger seeds, and yeah, she's somebody that I think is only really a contender on the hard courts, but when it's playing fast, her name is someone to just keep an eye out for. It's a surprising one, but she's up there.
All right, yeah, for sure. Yeah, and I was just the way she was hitting winners against Garcia, it was like she more so embodied Caroline Garcia than Caroline Garcia herself. That's what it felt like to me.
Yeah.
Okay, so and then Winston-Salem, it was like we mentioned earlier, it was Sebi Baez getting it done. And yeah, Sebi Baez, I mean, he's not the biggest server, he's not a big server, he's not the tallest guy around, but he's a very impressive player, very talented, very scrappy, very reminiscent of, I would say, fellow Argentine Diego Schwartzman, the way he scraps on the court, very good lateral movement, gets around the forehand very well, great forehand off of him. And he might come back later for the match of the week. He upset Borna Coric, the first seed in Winston-Salem, and then he took the title in straight sets against Yuri Lehechka. And yeah, Sebi Baez been very, very impressive. I was very sad for him earlier when on his own best surface on the clay in French Open, he lost after being up 3 breaks against Monfils in the 5th set. I was very happy for Gail, but I just felt like, listen, this guy can't catch a break. I don't think he's still ever been to the 3rd round of a major, but he's got 4 titles under his belt. So he's I don't know, he's somebody to watch, and I'm glad that he proved himself on hard court too, because I don't think he's just a clay courter. And I don't know, he's kind of an anomaly. He's like this young guy that nobody really talks about. So I wanted to point that out. And yeah, what were your thoughts on Winston-Salem this week and Sebi Baez getting it done on the hard courts?
Yeah, as you say, surprising name in the mix, and did upset Borna Coric, who, you know, has had some good results over the past year. Obviously wasn't able to defend his title in Canada, but I don't think any of us were really expecting him to. But nonetheless, a solid player on the tour. And if you looked at the lineup on paper, that would be a surprise. I think also during the tournament, Sebi Korda did roll his ankle and ended up withdrawing. So some question marks there over how serious that may have been, if it was a precautionary withdrawal, or if he's really going into this US Open swing carrying a niggling injury. It's disappointing for Korda because obviously he started the year so well in Australia, this being his home Grand Slam, the hard court being his stronger surface. That and the grass, didn't do so well at Wimbledon this year, losing early on, and obviously was nursing an injury from the AO that kept him out for quite some time. So Shame to see an injury picked up this late in the season, but unfortunately he's not the only name that's facing that type of challenge right now, and hopefully we'll see him back at the US Open competing as healthy as he can.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, that match that you mentioned where he rolled his ankle, I don't know if you got to catch a lot of it, but Korda versus Gasquet, which was really fantastic. It was 9-7 in the third set breaker. Gasquet saves a match point, then he goes up match point. Korda ends up coming back after, like you said, rolling his ankle. And we can only hope that he's good for New York, because he retired out of Winston-Salem, or withdrew before the match against Yuri Lehechka, who got a withdrawal to his first ATP final, which was impressive. And yeah, those are a few things going on. I also want to shout out Juan Manuel Cerundolo, who hadn't played a hardcourt match at any level since Miami last year. He was 3-4 on hard courts in his career. He beats Yannick Hanfmann, the 10th seed, and he gets to the quarterfinals. And it was like, I don't know, it's the clay quarters getting it done this week, and I really like Cerundolo. So. So those were a few things, and yeah, without further ado, do you want to get into let's get into story of the week, match of the week, player of the week?
Yeah.
All right, so story of the week, I've got Sebi Baez grabbing a hardcore title, his third of the year, his fourth in his career, already tying up Schwartzman for a number of titles, which is quite insane. And Diego Schwartzman reached a lot of finals. He lost in a lot of finals, and he had great achievements throughout his whole career, going deep in a lot. But winning titles was never Schwartzman's big thing, but still very impressive. Baez just already being one of the best Argentine players of the last, I don't know how many years, but in recent memory. So good for Baez getting that title, his story of the season. And yeah, that's my story of the week. And also with a great win over Borna Coric in the semifinals, beating him in a third set tiebreaker.
Yeah, absolutely. I would agree with your picks. And in terms of match of the week, I'd put that Korda Gasquet matchup up there as well. That was a great battle out there, and to see Gasquet at his age still going at it.
Yeah, I was gonna say younger guy versus older guy on the tour at this point, but it was
and I don't get how Gasquet honestly still gets it done. He only really has a backhand, but you know, he's a very intelligent player, and definitely fun to have him a part of the tour. And you know, one doesn't know how many more years he'll be around. So great to see him competing at a high level.
Yeah, and a fighter, very scrappy. Yeah, he'll fight till the end. And then player of the week, I've got Sebastian Baez on the men's side. I think Baez is underrated. I think he proved it this week, and I think that he showed up with a great level, some great shot making, and hitting that forehand, very crafty shots. And yeah, I got Baez with his great run on the hard courts, getting his first hardcourt title.
Who have you got on the WTA side?
And then on the WTA side, I got Lin Zhu, who reached the semifinals. And I thought Lin Zhu was just produced a very great week, beating out Caroline Garcia, beating out Blinkova. And I don't know, there's something about her run where I just felt like I wanted to shout her out as the player of the week. Sorribes Tormo, incredible run as well. And for just like Baez, for her to get on the hard courts was very impressive and unexpected, beating Alexandrova in the final, coming back from a set to break down. But I just wanted to shout out Lin Zhu because I thought she was fantastic. And they can both share player of the week, to be honest, but wanted to shout out Lin Zhu. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I think they pick themselves at the moment with the kind of run up into the US Open and not too many more tournaments happening besides these two. So we'll stick with those picks, and with no further ado, lead ourselves into our preamble for the US Open.
US Open. We got it. Yeah, let's do it.
Let's start with some announcements on withdrawals, updates on you know, who's competing this year. So we did towards the end of last week have two announcements of bigger withdrawals from former champion Bianca Andreescu, unfortunately picking up a stress fracture in her back just a couple weeks back during the Masters tournaments. And when I saw the news back then, I did not feel hopeful for her to be able to compete. That's a serious injury. And similarly, Badosa is also still nursing a stress fracture from her back that she got even pre the French Open of this year. So stress fractures in your back tend to be, in my opinion, about a 6-monther until you're really feeling good and happy to play again. And so it's a shame to see, you know, a former world number 2 and a former champion pull out this week, but more opportunities for qualifiers to get into the main draw. With that, we have also a US homegrown talent in Katie McNally, a former doubles partner of Coco Gauff. She pulls out with a wrist injury. And then we were a little bit surprised initially to see Simona Halep on the potential players list.
Yeah.
We thought, does that indicate any update as to what's happening with her ban? That's now been a year. But she was removed from the draw, which happened on Thursday. So she was automatically replaced by another American, Taylor Townsend. So those bigger names, again, Halep's situation is still ongoing. We don't really have an update there. But if you want to cover the ATP withdrawals, I'll let you cover those guys.
Yeah. And then, yeah, those, well, I was especially very sad to see Andreescu pull out because she's been struggling with a lot of injuries, and that was upsetting to see. And then Kyrgios pulling out with a wrist and knee injury, and Nick reached the quarterfinals last year at the Open and then lost to Karen Khachanov, who was playing very good, and reached two straight slam semifinals starting at the US Open last year. Yeah. And yeah, I was feeling bad for Kyrgios. Like, Kyrgios is a huge talent. Whenever he's around, it's good to see. So hopefully he comes back. Yeah. And then Jan-Lennart Struff with the hip injury as well. Sad to see Struff out because he was playing like the best tennis I had seen him in a while. Great serving and volleying play. Got to the final of Madrid, so it's sad to see him out. And then also Shapovalov with the knee injury. Was sad to see Shapo out. Pablo Carreno Busta, who's been out for a lot of tournaments. Hopefully he comes back. Riley Opelka, who I think is just typing up on Twitter more than playing. I don't know exactly what he's doing, but and then we got also Zhang, who's out as well. Yeah. So yeah, those were a few on the men's side as well. Particularly, I mean, or all of the players I hope come back, but Struff, I'm waiting on Struff to come back because he was playing unbelievable before he stopped. So
yeah, big bummer with him because he brought a different brand of tennis that I think is still needed on the tour. You know, it's a big serve, it's a serve and volley type of strategy, and it's nice to be able to have some variety inside the top 50. You know, a lot of the tour doesn't employ that as a mainstream strategy. And so to have a couple of names inside the top 50 who can do that, I think we talked about Max Purcell last week, also kind of being in that category of having the skill set. So definitely disappointing to miss out on Struff, who was really having a resurgent season. So hopefully he'll be back and healthy at the start of next year.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it's the Maxime Cressy type of play where, and I feel like it is going to have a little bit of a resurgence just because players are playing drop shots and people want to stop that kind of play. And also players are standing at the very back of the court where line judges used to stand at this point. And, and to kind of go against that, I think that serving volleying is going to have a little bit of a resurgence, as I think we're already starting to see a little bit. But yeah, hopefully Struff comes back. And then, yeah, we got some big announcements. We went through withdrawals, and then we got some big announcements with Big John Isner retiring. A great career. He won 16 titles. He got to 5 Masters finals, and he was very, I don't know. Yeah, people just thought of him as a server, but yeah, I mean, to be able to get through so many tight moments, he had a very top tier mentality as well. And he was, yeah, shout out on Big John going out, and hopefully has a last good tournament. But it's crazy to see him go.
Yeah, I remember you saying some sort of crazy stat about how long he had been inside the top 50 last week. Obviously, we mentioned as well he's been in every US Open since 2007. So, you know, really a name that we've gotten to know over the years that's just kind of been consistently buzzing around. And obviously he has that historic longest match ever written into the history books at Wimbledon, which will never be beat given that the 5th set tiebreak is now implemented. So
and it wouldn't have been beaten even if that stuck around. No, not a chance.
Yeah. So Big John certainly has earned his accolades and respect in the sport, and wish him nothing but the very best moving forward. Hope he enjoys time with his family and has a good final tournament at the US Open.
Yeah, happy retirement to John. I think that 2010 match is going to end up being a defining match for his career with how he battled through so many crazy moments like that throughout his whole career.
Very much so. Yeah.
And then
goes another American, in Jack Sock. So former top 8 player, Olympic gold medalist. I think he's at least a 2-time Grand Slam doubles champion. He really is a phenomenal talent, and it's such a shame that injury has hampered his career for a lot of it, and just hasn't quite been able to fulfill that kind of full potential on the singles court. And we know he's been struggling with ongoing wrist injuries over the last few years that have just made playing consistently too difficult for him. And the interesting announcement that goes alongside that, he will play doubles with Isner, so the two of them will get a goodbye together. And depending on how you feel about pickleball, will depend on how you feel about the next part of the news, which is he is joining a pro pickleball league. So still using his athleticism, his coordination, but nowhere near the speed and strength required on the ATP tour. So I'm not sure that's my favorite news of the week, but you know, if it gives him the opportunity to still compete and travel and grow another sport that ultimately, you know, is in the family of tennis and is in that realm, then kudos to him. And hopefully, I'm not sure I'll be paying for a pickleball tournament ticket to go see him, but hopefully he'll have fun.
Yeah, hopefully he has fun. I don't know if I'll be watching, but no, I mean, I would say this. I don't think he was. It would be different if he was still world number 8 and he was, if he was at the top of the sport. But I think that if he's enjoying playing pickleball, then all kudos to him. And he wasn't getting a whole lot of wins at the pro tennis level at the moment anyway. So I think that if he wants to do that and it's not like for finance reasons or anything, he genuinely enjoys playing, then I think all good to him. If he enjoys playing another sport, nothing wrong with it. My biggest thing is that I just don't want to see pickleball taking away from tennis. But if we can live side by side, then albeit I'm all for it. But yeah, I won't be purchasing a ticket either, to be honest. But then Taylor Townsend set to compete in U.S. Open main draw after Halep went out, which is Townsend in the draw, Georgia native, and I was happy to see Townsend in the draw as well, which is good.
And another mom coming back to the tour, a person who's done a lot of work as a commentator as well on Tennis Channel. She's somebody that's very insightful, and now she's also, I think, world doubles #1, or at least inside the top 5. So, you know, she's really had a comeback on the double side, which I think is awesome for her game. She has played a couple good singles tournaments this year. She just missed out on qualifying to a tricky opponent in Sophia Kenin at Wimbledon. So, you know, she's a name that's trying to come back and is in and around the mix, and she's a player that has a lot of variety and can really come to the net and finish points well. So she also kind of has a story of like not really being super looked after by the USTA, you know, being a slightly bigger woman and kind of people questioning her fitness and what she's really able to do out on the court. But she's proven some of them wrong, and the fact that she can, you know, leave at such an early age and have a kid and come back and kind of start seeing success now, I think is awesome. And really wishing her all the best for this tournament, because I would love to see her climb back up the rankings.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I mean, and really good in doubles as well. I've gotten to see her play a few times this year, and she hands phenomenal as well. So yeah, good to see her back. I mean, Caroline Wozniacki is the crazy example. She had a few kids, and now she's back on the tour, which is more impressive than anything anybody else is probably doing. What was it? If I can say, it was Svitolina earlier at Wimbledon after 9 months, and she still comes back. Was crazy to see to me.
Yeah, a couple names there in the mom mix. it's going to be Townsend, Svitolina, Wozniacki, Azarenka, Tatiana Maria, who also has had a decent couple runs at these tournaments. So yeah, some significant names in the mix, and potentially 2 more coming back next year in Osaka and Kaba. So yeah, more women showing that it's possible to come back, which I think is great for the sport, and not just tennis, but women's sport in general. So fantastic to see.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, I think that's good. And then yeah, do you want to go to also before we move on to the into the main draw and going through the draw real quick, I also want to point out Kevin Anderson, how it was in the qualifying for the tournament, and he reached the final like 6 years ago. I just felt like he should have got. I felt like he should have got a wild card in from getting to the final 6 years ago, and I just feel like there could be a rule where if you've been in the final of the tournament in the last 10 years, you get an immediate wild card. Because I just felt bad for Kevin, who just came back from retirement like 2 or 3 months ago, and I just felt bad for the guy.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the tricky thing, in that Anderson has been off of the scene for a couple of years in his retirement, and so you know, those announcements of making a comeback and those types of pieces, I think it's hard in times of allocations. Obviously, we also saw Raonic making a comeback this year, former world number 3 and Grand Slam finalist. So a couple of names in there that you know, make things tricky. And with the US Open, really, you know, like most slams, but predominantly awarding to US based players. It was definitely surprising to see him in the qualifying, but not so surprised that he didn't quite make it through. Just I think sometimes that level of competition just continues to improve, and it can catch players off guard who, you know, are sitting around at home thinking, oh yeah, I can come back and do this. I was great 6 years ago. What can be different? And a lot can be different. Sure. Also, some other, you know, names in there, Grand Slam finalists in Jeannie Bouchard. Not making it out of qualifying, but obviously made it to the finals of Wimbledon a number of years ago. So she's been a name that's been off the circuit for a while and just has not been able to make a significant comeback. And she lost out to a player that she accused of doping earlier this year, and there was no handshake that happened after that. So maybe a little bit of karma coming her way. But yeah, always interesting to see those types of bigger names that have, you know, been up and around there in the past that are back in qualifying. You know, it's a humbling sight.
Yeah, no, I think so for sure. I think they would agree too. But yeah, it's good to see him back though. And then do you want to go let's go to the US Open draw then without further ado. I think this is what is on everybody's minds and what is fun to talk about. So okay, well the men's draw, we can go men's and then we can go women's draw as well to end it off. Let's do it. Okay, so well, the first thing that stands out is Alcaraz and Sinner can have a rematch in the quarterfinals, and that's at the top of the draw. They could play in the quarterfinals once again. Last year, they played in the quarterfinals. They went 5 sets, latest finish in U.S. Open history at 2:50 in the morning, playing what we all know is it was an epic match. And I don't know, Sinner got Alcaraz in Miami. I think that's going to be super interesting if they do get to play again, because Alcaraz has been having trouble against the big hitters, having trouble against Jannik Sinner, and Sinner is going to be out for revenge.
Absolutely. If I'm not mistaken, I think they have an even head-to-head, or it's
3-3.
3-3 at the moment. So yeah, and as you say, Sinner has picked up a couple hard court wins against Alcaraz, but then again, we haven't seen that in 5 sets. And to me, Alcaraz has a little bit of an edge on that front, although Sinner it looks like to me, has been working on his fitness and his strength a lot this season with his new coaching team. So physicality wise, I would expect this potential quarterfinal matchup to be a huge battle. I would not be surprised if we saw another really long 5-set match between the two. Their game styles are just so well set up to compete against each other, because they're both you know, powerful hitters. Alcaraz maybe having a little bit more of that kind of finesse and ability to drop shot and kind of come to the net, but Sinner is starting to add some of that variety. His serve is much improved, and my goodness, he can generate some speed off of that forehand. And I got nothing to say other than it'll probably be fireworks. And I just really hope that both of them are healthy and, you know, can leave it all out there, because that'll be a treat.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, they always produce. I feel like, well, Alcaraz, I think, just forces whoever's on the other side of the court to be at their creative best and force them to hit all kinds of crazy shots. And he has every shot in the book. He can hit great shots from every position on the court. I feel like he forces Sinner to be super creative and use a lot of variety, which I think Sinner is sometimes uncomfortable to do. And I think that pushes Sinner to play at his best. And I think Sinner just hitting winners from all over the court, pushing Alcaraz all out of position on his back foot, also pushes Alcaraz to have to kind of problem solve, figure out how to dictate, and get on the front foot himself, which really makes, I think whenever you have a lot of really fast play, it creates some really great shot making, like on the grass courts that hits super fast. And the players really have to adapt to really make up for how quickly the play is going. So basically, I think both guys trying to dictate really creates this kind of great contest between the two and a great battle that pushes each to play their best tennis.
Absolutely. And one also has to note that Alcaraz quarter is looking pretty tricky in terms of names on that half of the draw. Whoever wins that match, if seeds hold, I believe would face Medvedev. Obviously, also a former champion and a self-proclaimed hard court specialist.
Yeah.
He might be a little disappointed to know that the courts apparently are not playing quite as fast as they did last year. They're a little bit more of a medium speed, but you know, I think some folks were asking what the likelihood of Sinner winning this title is. And when one takes a look at the draw and thinks, oh man, he would have to beat Alcaraz, Medvedev, and then quite possibly Djokovic, I think for me, that's out of his reach in beating 3 Grand Slam winners at this tournament,
And
and
then
out the defending champ. I think that's too big of an ask.
yeah. And then, of course, you are speaking to the idiot who projected Sinner to win the title, of course, which is great to have. No, I'm a Yannick Sinner fan,
Yes,
but
same.
not
It
here.
wasn't fun.
Yeah. Totally. I mean, in honesty, I think it's a very tough route, especially if all 3 of those guys don't get upset. I think Djokovic, I'm not fully confident in him and physically recovering after the Cincinnati final, although I think it's quite possible. But I think that one of those guys could get upset before he has to face one of them. But of course, if he has to play Alcaraz, then Medvedev back to back, that seems like a very, very tough task, and he'll have to do something he's never done before. Although he tried to do it at Miami, but either way, it's something that he's never accomplished, and I think that that would be a tough task. And if he does do it, I think one of those guys would have to be upset early for sure.
Yeah. Who do
And it
you
could
think
be
could
sorry,
upset
and it
Go for
sorry.
it.
No, go for it. What'd you say? Sorry.
Who do you think could upset Djokovic?
It's a yeah, that's a tough question for sure. I think I think Tiafoe is a name who I really enjoyed last
Mhm.
year, and he pushed Djokovic to 4 sets at the Australian Open 1 year, 2 tiebreakers, and I thought that was a match that I kind of locked into my brain as like, wow, this Tiafoe really played well against Djokovic, and I think that will be late in the tournament when I think Djokovic might be um I don't know, when he's lost at the US Open, generally it has been late in the tournament, and he could be a little bit tired after a long season. He is 36, turning 37 next season. So I think Tiafoe is a name that I would put up there, but it's really hard to say. I mean, maybe, I don't know. Let's see who else is here. Holger Rune could be another guy I would put up there with a chance.
Yeah, he might
Um,
also face either a Zverev or a Tsitsipas in the quarters, except I wouldn't pick either of those names to get a dub over Joker.
Yeah, no, I think so too. Yeah, if Taylor Fritz is in there as well, yeah, I
Mhm.
wouldn't bet on any of them. Um, I'm betting Tiafoe and Sinner both have revenge after getting so close last year, and they get to the latest
Wow.
stages of this tournament.
Bold prediction. I am not feeling that bold at all. I am thinking it's gonna be an
It's probably
Alcaraz
smart.
final. I'm feeling pretty confident in that, in the sense that I think those are the two best players at the moment, the 2 mentally toughest players at the moment too. And I think also in best of 5, have the ability really to reset, problem solve, and just grind out wins, even if they might see themselves in a tricky position. I think if you asked me about Tiafoe just before Wimbledon, I might have felt a little bit more positive with him getting inside the top 10, but he had a disappointing loss to Dimitrov. He's not really had a huge warm-up season into the US Open, which I think he, would admit he's a little bit disappointed with. And obviously, came close, very close last year against Alcaraz and really just missed out. So you never know who can kind of turn it around in the big lights, the big stage, the crowd being on his side, and potentially somebody having an off day, picking up a tweak in an injury or something kind of going on. Maybe you could see that those types of factors, to me at least, would need to take place in order for him to take out Djokovic. I just think Djokovic at the moment with the loss at Wimbledon just has, he's the best when he's angry, and then when his back is against the wall, he just knows how to come out the woodwork swinging. And I think he will have a fire lit inside of him of like, there's no way I want to end the year 2-2 in the slams. I want to be number one. I want to have 3 out of the 4 titles and get his revenge. So I think he will be a monumental task to take down.
Yeah, all fair points. Yeah, I think Tiafoe losing at Wimbledon to Dimitrov is a very, it's very interesting because he has to defend semis or semis from last year, or he does drop down to number 14 in the world, drops out of the top 10. Yeah, I think that's definitely fair. He did lose in the first round of Canada and Cincinnati last year before going into the U.S. Open, but I think that that's definitely fair. And yeah, about Djokovic, he's not a guy who does pretend. He doesn't care about numbers. He doesn't care about size. He's like, yeah, I want to go all the way here. And if he says it, he's really looking to do it. And I think that's something about Novak that I actually personally like. Novak comes off pretty genuine and as a guy who really says what's on his mind. And if he's looking to get the most majors ever, he's I think he really he'll say it. He won't be afraid to say it. But yeah. And then looking more down this draw, I mean, we got Medvedev de Minaur, who just played in Canada. De Minaur got the win over Medvedev. They could play in that section, which I think is interesting. And then but in the center section, like you said, in the top half, I kind of feel like the draw is a little bit top heavy. I don't know if you would say
very much so top heavy. That was, I don't know how they pulled that off, but it's feeling like all the in-form players are in the top half, and other than Djokovic, all the people who are a little out of form, maybe just coming kind of back into things, are in the bottom half, and feels skewed. Yeah.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think Djokovic would. I think most people would give people, if Djokovic complains about the draw, I think that most people would be a little bit surprised because you got to think he's got a pretty good draw.
Oh, 100%. I don't think he has any leg to stand on there really. But yeah, a couple interesting, kind of first round matchups there. We've still got Andy Murray in the mix, who always fancies himself to make a decent run. He could face Dimitrov kind of early on, the battle of the legends, maybe a little bit. Wawrinka is still in the mix, and yeah, as you say, it's going to be a tough ask for anyone other than those big seeded names to come out of that half or that quarter.
Yeah, Murray, Dimitrov have not played since 2016. They played, I think, 12, 13 times back in the day. So it's been a while since those two guys faced. I think it was actually Murray with a 9-3 head-to-head over Dimitrov. I was looking at it since I saw that they could play in the second round. This is going to be a tough task for Murray because Dimitrov, I've really liked how Grigor's played all season. He was one of my biggest dark horses going into the tournament. So I think he's a player to watch. Also, Zverev is in very good form, but he plays Vukic in the first round, who I think is very tough. Big server, big hitter, and he just got to the final of Atlanta, and he's had a few good wins recently.
Yeah, and nothing to lose, and we all know Zverev can very much exhibit a case of the yips on the tennis court. So wouldn't be too surprised if we saw an upset there, but at the same time, it does seem like Zverev is starting to really find a little bit of momentum, find some of that form from pre-French Open last year. Another name that's back in the mix that I don't know what to expect from is Berrettini. Obviously, his game should do well on this surface, but he's just not been the same player mentally coming back from his injury problems that picked up at the last part of the season last year. And so I'm not sure what to expect from him. He will play Hugo Humbert, who's another name that, you know, just 2 years ago we thought was a really solid top 20 player, could really push on from there, and had some injuries and fell out the top 100 and has had some confidence crisis going on. So 2 players there that probably just have a lot on the line mentally as to who's going to come out of that and really be able to push on and have a good year next year.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that match up, because I think both players are players that although they did struggle a lot last year, beginning of this year, Humbert has won not a few titles, but a few like challengers, 175 challengers that they introduced this year, kind of one of the higher point challenger tournaments.
Yeah.
And he's kind of climbed up a little bit more up the
Mhm.
rankings, I think like 30, 35 in the world.
Yeah.
And Berrettini just got to the 4th round of Wimbledon, lost to Alcaraz, but beats Zverev in straight sets. Zverev, who was playing very good aggressive tennis on the grass, coming to net a lot more than we used to seeing from him as well. And I think that Berrettini beating him in straight sets was kind of a match of Berrettini saying like, I'm back a little bit, and kind of showing that. And I think that's a good match. That match didn't really stand out to me when I looked at the draw, but it really is a very interesting match. And I reckon Matteo could get the upset, if you would even call it an upset, over Humbert, because his big forehands on the U.S. Open fast courts is really going to cause trouble.
Yeah, another first round match that could be interesting to pay attention to, in my opinion, is Rublev-Ruusuvuori. I believe Ruusuvuori got the better of Rublev recently in the Masters tournament. And Rublev seemed to be kind of panicked in that match. He just didn't really have many answers for Ruusuvuori, and we know that Ruusuvuori is quite a talented player. And he's just, you know, he's just starting to figure out how to put a complete match together and kind of really see his full skill set applied throughout the entirety of a match. I don't know, you know, in 5 sets, and obviously Rublev has a little bit more experience, but I think Rublev would have seen that draw and been like, that wouldn't be my first choice of player to face in the round 1 of the US Open.
Yeah, no, that's definitely fair. Yeah, I think so too, and that's definitely going to be a very interesting match as well. There's a few here that I think are interesting for players. I mean, I also got who is it? Tsitsipas taking on Raonic, and Raonic playing a bit. Yeah, that seems like a nightmare. I mean, Tsitsipas is generally actually very good against fast servers I've seen, but Raonic is coming with the fury, and Tsitsipas lost in one of the stranger first round matches last year. He was down. He lost like 6-0, 6-0 the first couple sets or something against Galan, and he never really shows up at the U.S. Open like he does at the other majors. And I think that Raonic is really coming back with fury at the moment. I think everybody saw that match. They're like, that is a hell of a first round with Raonic, who used to be number 3 in the world and is really coming back playing very high level tennis. And Tsitsipas could also play Christopher Eubanks in the 3rd round, and that would be a rematch off of Wimbledon, where Tsitsipas led 2-1 but couldn't convert anyway. And it's going to be interesting if Chris Eubanks can do it again in front of the home crowd. It's going to be tough to do it twice in a row, but Tsitsipas hasn't been in form, and I think that could be both of those matches are going to be ones to watch. And Fritz is on the other side. He could be looking to get to a second major quarterfinal in that section as well.
Yeah, and I think the US Open for me is one of the slams where the home favorites really get carried by the crowd. It's very intimidating atmosphere and environment, and Tiafoe thrives in that kind of loud atmosphere. I also think the US Open crowd will be behind Raonic, and we know that Tsitsipas gets flustered from activities going on in the crowd. I would like to think that we might see 4 sets there. My only question marks is Raonic's fitness in 5 sets. Tsitsipas just, you know, possibly being a little bit fitter in that area. I anticipate him getting through that, but I hope it's a challenge for him. I think the other one that I wanted to point out was also Fucsovic versus Korda. Again, we mentioned earlier, Korda kind of rolling his ankle, coming into the tournament, not quite sure what the status is of that and how severe it was. But again, a nightmare name you do not want to see in the first round of your Grand Slam. Fucsovic, obviously, able to pull out big match wins. He went toe-to-toe with Djokovic earlier this year. He hits a big game, and on a fast, hard court, to me at least, would be a challenge for Korda. And so really hope he's able to make some headway here and get a couple more points up on the board. But I feel like that could be a name that drops early.
Yeah, it could be. I'm definitely interesting. I felt like Korda is an interesting player because I feel like he was playing better in Winston-Salem than we've seen in recent months. But I think that the injury is an interesting one. He said after the match that it actually was nothing too serious, despite rolling his ankle. He said in the statement after. So I'm hoping that stands and that he's mostly okay. But if it is going to be a physical 5-setter, you don't want it to be Fucsovic on the other side because he's tough. He's tough physically, and he'll battle to the end. He was up 2-0 on Sinner earlier this year at the Australian Open, and he can really be dangerous against a lot of guys. Clean hitter, and I don't know, just a talented guy. So. And he just always looks like he's playing better above his rank. And sometimes I feel like he does have trouble closing out big matches, but in the same way, he's always very, very dangerous and can be a guy who you don't want to see on the other side of the net.
Yeah. Also going on live as we speak, Bublik versus Dominic Thiem.
Yeah.
Thiem being a name, obviously, that's coming back, winning this slam a couple years ago, going nowhere since then. And Bublik having a good year, so let's see if he's able to turn it around by the time we podcast again next week. But that's a big score happening right now.
Yeah, that's super interesting. Was it Thiem is up 6-3, I think, won the first set over Bublik. So yeah, we'll keep an eye on that one for sure. I think that's a popcorn match. And Dominic Thiem, I mean, he always plays well at the US Open. I remember 2018 he played against Rafael Nadal and went a close 5-setter with him. And yeah, I don't know. There's something that he loves about the U.S. Open courts, and he just hits absolutely huge at the U.S. Open, more than I see him play anywhere else. So that part of it really helps out his game when he plays here. And then and then we can go to the bottom of the draw with Djokovic. And do you see anybody in we kind of touched upon a little bit. Do you see anybody in his quarter who you feel like can even test him? He has Ojé Aliassime, who really is not in form. He's got Francisco Cerundolo. Do you see anybody that can really test him out?
I hate to say it, but no, I don't. As you say, Ojé Aliassime is just not a name that's been consistently up there this year. In fact, I would not be surprised if McDonald got a dub over him today or tomorrow. It's just not been his year. His confidence isn't there, and I just would not think that he's a name that can really cause problems. And yeah, when you look at the rest of the draw, I mean, we're looking at names here that aren't big seeds. The biggest seeds being Cerundolo, who I wouldn't think it is going to be a significant challenge on the hard courts if Djokovic were to face him. I really think, most likely the names would be Fritz, who he absolutely steamrolled a couple weeks ago. And then we're talking, Tsitsipas and Zverev. And I just don't see it happening, bar an injury or bar a catastrophe from the Djokovic end. So.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, Zverev is actually at the top of the draw there, but yeah, he's got Fritz there as well as Tsitsipas as well. Yeah. But I don't see anybody either, and I think it's definitely good points. I mean, if Felix was informed, then yeah, I would think definitely there could be a chance. But yeah, but yeah, it seems tough. I think if it's going to be somebody, I think Djokovic struggles more against big servers. Maybe somebody like a miracle run from Eubanks or Raonic, but really it's just things that seem completely unlikely with Djokovic in the form he's at and just beating Alcaraz the final Cincinnati, playing at a very high level still in his career. And you just got to think that he has already pretty much secured a ticket to the semifinal where he most likely would play against Tiafoe, against Ruud, against Korda, against Paul, against Rune, one of those guys, if not Bublik or Thiem or somebody else who we were just mentioning. But I think that it's he couldn't have asked for a better draw.
Paul could be a name that sneaks in there. Obviously, he got a win over Alcaraz in the Masters. He was up there in the Australian Open. Had a couple good runs there. Again, a homegrown player, so he's going to have the crowd on his side. He's really improved on his fitness a lot this year. Movements looking really good. Racket change up for him is looking great. So I think Paul is a name that's for me as well, often overlooked. Someone that can fly under the radar a little bit, which might work to his benefit. So I'd suggest keeping an eye out for him. He could sneak up towards the second week.
Yeah, totally. I think Paul is a player. Yeah, he was at number 5 on my power rankings last week. I think he's a player who is very impressive and is super aggressive. He's a player who, if he does go deep, he can challenge a lot of players. Obviously, he's already beaten Alcaraz a couple of times, which is very good as well. And he was 7th in the race to Turin going into the clay season this year. He's 5th best win percentage on hard courts this year. And I think against Holger Rune, who we kind of have questions about Rune going deep, or I have questions about Rune going deep in major tournaments and in tournaments. And I think that Paul is one of my biggest dark horses going in. I think he should be for anybody who's really, really paying attention to the sport at the moment. And I think that Paul Fokina match could be really big because Fokina has been playing really good tennis all year, and he just reached the semis of Canada as well. So I reckon that could be a really big third round, and then potentially the fourth round, whoever gets to play against Holger. And I reckon Tommy Paul could do it with the home crowd advantage as well.
Yeah, completely agree with it.
And then Casper Ruud is on the other side with Tiafoe. Ruud Tiafoe would be absolutely blockbuster in the fourth round. I mean, 2 semifinalists from last year.
Yeah.
And that should be fun.
Yeah, totally agree. Women's draw looking pretty strong this year. It's going to be really tough to make some predictions early on who's winning here. Again, a heavy top half with the defending champ Swiatek having Rybakina and Coco Gauff in her quarter. So she would face Gauff in the quarters, then Rybakina, and then potentially a Sabalenka in the final. So a lot of names there that I think could go deep and see some of those seeds hold. I think where I kind of have some question marks is over more on Sabalenka's half with Jabeur, coming into this swing with a couple more injuries, obviously coming off the back of Wimbledon, where she said she still feels like she needs time to process that loss. She's still feeling a lot of that pain. And, I think a couple names that could be unpredictable, but cause some problems. Vondrousova coming in. We've also got Samsonova, who's had a couple good runs on hard courts. So I think the women's tournament is a little bit harder to exactly foresee what's going to happen. But if there is a name, for me at least, to bet on, it would be Swiatek to get to the final. I just think her movement is superior. Her problem solving and ability to kind of fight under pressure at these Grand Slam events. She has a little bit more experience than those other players at the top in terms of how many slams she holds, having won here in the past, with Sabalenka not making it to the finals before. So a couple really kind of interesting storylines there. And what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, my thoughts are that I think Swiatek, of all the players, is the player that I do think that she's the best bet, but I think her draw is as equally tough for Swiatek as it is for Coco Gauff. They meet each other in quarterfinals. I think that that's a draw that both of them at this point looked at, and they were both thinking, this is my nightmare draw. Swiatek got Gauff in her quarter every single major this year, every single one of the first 3 majors. And I think she was happy to get Gauff for the first 3 majors of the year, but now that Gauff's gone one on her and doing much better off the forehand, getting Swiatek way out of position, and I don't know, doing better against Swiatek's defense and being able to break it down better and hit through her. I think that Swiatek is not happy to get Coco in her quarter at all. And I think that I think Coco is still not very happy to have Swiatek in her quarter, although I think she's feeling a little bit better about it now. And I think that's going to be one interesting to watch. And I think to add to Swiatek, I mean, first and second seed, but my biggest eye is on Aryna Sabalenka. And I think Sabalenka always shows up to the US Open with a level that I think is very impressive. Her fast shots really work well in New York. And I think that I kind of like her draw. We could get a quarterfinal against Ons Jabeur, which who she nearly beat at Wimbledon, but lost an epic to, where Jabeur came back at Wimbledon. And it was, I think, thankfully for Sabalenka, she's playing Jabeur in the quarterfinals and not the semis, because Sabalenka is having trouble in the semifinals a lot. And I think that playing her in the quarters is going to be better. And then the semis, she could have somebody like Caroline Garcia, Vondrousova, Pegula, Samsonova. But I kind of like Sabalenka's draw, and I reckon that Sabalenka's a player that I've got my eye on. And if she can pass that semifinal hurdle, that might be the biggest thing for her.
Yeah, agree. I think that bottom half of the draw is a little bit more open. I would fancy her to turn things around against Jabeur this time around in the quarters, just kind of with Jabeur's state of mind and injury status a little bit. And I think her game, you know, really suits the hard court, suits New York, plays well under the lights, gets the crowd on her side. And I would think she could also potentially face, am I right in saying, like a Muchova in the semifinal? Who would be a little bit tricky, or a Svitolina, but I think she has a really good chance of making her first final here at the US Open, kind of bookend of the year, drawing off of her experience of the hard courts in the Australian Open. And I would think she actually comes into this tournament with a good amount of confidence. So I would expect to at least see her deep in the second week.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would be saying that Sabalenka hasn't had the last few good weeks, so I think they'll be saying that she's running low on confidence. But I'm like, I think her confidence is going to be super high after the season she's had. She's never had a season like this where she won a major, and she won Madrid, beat Swiatek in the final. She's done so much this year that's been so impressive. So I think she's going to be super confident.
Yeah, and you know, also credit to her opponent. She's faced some tough players in the semis of these tournaments. And I think in one of her press conferences, she said, she's like, you know, I made it to a semifinal of a Masters tournament. Like, of course I want to win it, but I'm still pleased with my performance. And, you know, I think if she's able to take some of the pressure off earlier on in the tournament and kind of be like, look, like, I'm confident I'm going to make it to the quarters and semis, and then I can really knuckle down, see who's left in the drawer, and, you know, really start playing my A game and executing. Then I think, you know, there's no reason to bet against her in that sense. You know, bar somebody really playing lights out tennis, but, you know, losing to Jabeur, last year's finalist as well at Wimbledon, a great player on the grass, great variety. You know, she's not a loss to be scoffed at by any means. So
no shame.
I think Sabalenka really can come into this tournament, as you say, with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, absolutely. And then looking at that bottom draw, we got over here, we got in this second quarter, we have Rybakina, we got Bencic, we got Sakkari, and then we got Muchova in here as well.
Yeah.
And we got we could get Sakkari. I think most of us would be more not so confident in, but I think Rybakina playing against maybe Muchova in the or Potted Maya maybe in the quarter would be a really interesting match to see how that is.
Yeah, absolutely. Definitely some names in there that could also upset, as you say. Alexandrova's in there, Samsonova's in there, Vondrousova's in there. These are names that you know, could all start really causing some problems for folks. So I think the women's side of this tournament is going to be very interesting. I think the other name to really mention who often gets forgotten in the conversation is Pegula. She does face a tricky opponent in Camilla Giorgi in the first round, who again is like Fuskovic, is a name that you see in the draw and you're like, God, do I really have to play her first round?
Yeah.
I mean, she's so when she plays her best tennis, as Venus Williams said, she could be number one in the world. That woman can hit the ball. So it could be a tricky one for Pegula, but at the same time, I think Pegula is almost like very business ready for this tournament. You know, feels good coming in off of Montreal. She, you know, has had the last kind of 10 days or so to get some good rest post that tournament. I think, you know, obviously she's an American, so the crowd's going to back her. she's got such a consistent game. And I think, you know, she's like a Paul in the sense that her name isn't always up there in terms of people thinking of her as a contender, but she certainly has the skill set to have a deep run in this tournament and kind of turn the narrative around as somebody who is a name that's worth considering getting much deeper than a quarter.
Yeah, definitely. I think yeah, that's a good point for sure. I think Pegula is going to be interesting to watch. I think that she is somebody that a lot of people don't count out. I think a lot of people like the spectacle, like the big hitting, and Pegula I don't think brings that as much, but I think that the style of play she brings is just as effective, constantly going deep in tournaments. And I think that she beat Swiatek, for example, like to start the year at United Cup like 6-2, 6-2, and everybody's like, man, this Pegula is somebody that we're really underrating. Won Guadalajara last year as well, for doing well at the WTA finals, I believe, as well. I think I think that Pegula is somebody who is one to watch, and anybody who is able to beat Samsonova 6-0, 6-1 in the final Montreal like she did is kind of a crazy player to watch for sure. So I think that Pegula is going to be one to watch. I think, yeah, the home crowd is going to be interesting. The only doubts would be that she's never been past a quarterfinal, and also we were mentioning about her draw, if I could see that here. She's got Samsonova, and then she's got potentially Vondrousova, Garcia. She's got a very good draw. So I reckon if she's going to get past a quarterfinal, this is the day to do it. And when she breaks through that wall, she just might not ever stop running. So I think she could go all the way. And I think, like Alcaraz last year at the US Open, got through a quarterfinal barrier and then went all the way. I think Pegula could do the same thing. So I agree with you. I think Pegula is somebody to watch, and like I said, that win in Montreal is really going to propel her confidence in a really massive way, I think, for this tournament. And she's going under the radar in a big way.
Totally. Definitely agree with you there.
Yeah, and then also we got Venus in the draw. She's playing against Minin in the first round, Belgian player Minin in the bottom of the draw. And then she could potentially...
Yeah, that one's a result of Badosa pulling out, which would have actually been a winnable match given Badosa's injury status, but I'm sure Venus is glad that it's not Badosa, because maybe that improves her chances of getting to round two.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think and then she could get Vekic in the second round. Vekic a very solid, and she likes a faster court, and she's gonna love New York. So I think that's gonna be fun as well. And then on the other side, if she gets to the third round, she's got Alicia Parks and Kazatkina, and I'd love to break down the whole draw for Venus, just go round by round, because you just never know, do you? So but Sabalenka fourth round, if that helps. But we'll see. Venus is not one to count out. No. And it's always exciting to have her in the draw. And is there other stuff you want to go through with the women's draw? We could also talk about if we do see for example, big three final, Rybakina, Sabalenka, Swiatek, is Iga the one that you're betting on to win those kind of matches?
Tough
big question. It's a big question. Yeah, it's a big question.
You know, so yes, simple answer, yes, I would bet on Swiatek. However, I think given the nature of this draw, if Swiatek does have to come through Gauff and Rybakina, especially if Rybakina is fully fit, we know she did have some shoulder injuries coming off of Montreal. We don't, she hasn't been well at the last two Grand Slams. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if Rybakina didn't make the semis, but if there is a healthy Rybakina in her way in the semis, and then potentially having to face Sabalenka in the final, that's, again, three really tough back-to-back matches. And to me, it's kind of a similar situation of like that Alcaraz, like needing to come through Sinner, Medvedev, and Djokovic to get the title. If someone was to upset Alcaraz, we said that would be a tough ask to then come through another two matches. I feel similarly about Coco in that even if she beat Iga, then having to beat Rybakina and then Sabalenka, to me, feels like a tall order. And I just think if Swiatek has a couple really tough battles there, that sucks a lot of energy. If one of those is a night match, which we know she doesn't like to play, I would assume that quarter with Coco is going to be a night match because that's something the fans would want to see. So I wouldn't necessarily be surprised if she was feeling low on energy, maybe picked up a little niggle here and there. Some of that tiredness creeps in, especially if Sabalenka has a reasonably straightforward run into the semis. You know, if a Jabeur or somebody like that falls a little early, and Sabalenka has a little bit more in the tank left to give, then Sabalenka is my close second choice. I feel very conflicted between Swiatek and Sabalenka in the same way that I do between Alcaraz and Djokovic. I guess a few more question marks as to whether one of them might fall a little earlier than expected.
Yeah. Yeah, that's fair. I have a bit of a head-to-head question mark with Swiatek against Sabalenka this year. I think Sabalenka got her on the Madrid clay courts, and I think if they play at the U.S. Open, I would pretty confidently have Sabalenka, a 2023 version of Sabalenka on a faster hard court over a player like Iga Swiatek on a faster hard court. So I think Sabalenka has lost. How many times has Sabalenka lost in the U.S. Open semifinals? It's been more than once. It's been more than twice.
Well, she lost to Iga last year in the semis. So
last 2 years she's lost in the semis, and that could either be a mental baggage thing, or it could be like, you know what, I'm finally breaking this open and I'm going all the way. And I don't know why. I kind of feel like it's going to be the latter, especially since losing semis at Roland Garros, at Wimbledon, at US Open, that's going to be a tough pill to swallow, and it might happen. But I also like Sabalenka's draw, and I reckon on a head-to-head, I would have Sabalenka.
Okay. Yeah. And your thoughts on Rybakina? Do you think she's in the mix or not backing up? Okay.
I think so, but it is more of a question mark because of what we've seen recently. Obviously, when she plays her best, she can play great. But I do have Rybakina. I think she's a player who I think she's just not shown the level of consistency or dominance that Sabalenka or Swiatek have shown at different points, but she's constantly been there. And even though she's had a subpar candidate in Cincinnati, I think she can jump back and still have a very good run at a big tournament.
Yeah.
So I would say Rybakina is a good shout for myself. I don't hate how she's playing. If she's healthy, I think that she's still a danger, and I do like her draw. So
yeah,
I reckon she's one to watch as
well.
well.
I think we've covered the nitty-gritty details.
Yeah, I think so.
And yeah, I think it'll be a really interesting podcast when we check in with everybody next week as to how some of these things have played out that we've discussed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I think, I'm excited for the U.S. Open next week. I mean, we're going to have loads to talk about on the podcast, I think, which is going to be super exciting as well. And I think, definitely excited for it. So thank you guys for watching Tennis 360. We'll be here next week talking about the U.S. Open as well, and after the event has already started. But I hope you guys enjoyed the video. Don't forget to subscribe to Quality Shot Tennis as well. Don't forget to like the video if you enjoyed it. It's been Anthony Hirsch here.
And Eliza Wastcoat.
And we appreciate you watching the video. And we'll see you guys at the next one.
Bye.